We are back with another episode of The Gold Standard. He is Charlie Goldsmith. I am Joe Daneman, and let's talk about what's going to happen on Friday. We are taping this podcast on Thursday. Everybody in Cincinnati is gearing up for the Duke Tobin press conference on Friday. I made a joke to our mutual friend Austin Elmore at ESPN 1530 that this is Cincinnati's playoff game. The way people are building this up. I expect to see tailgaters outside of Paycor Stadium before the Duke Tobin press conference.
Can we get walk-in videos of the outfits for the
That
reporters?
would be amazing.
Yeah.
Are you going to wear what you're wearing today?
Who knows?
Who knows? Maybe you wear the purple that's actually blue that people think is blue but really is purple.
That's a deep cut. That's an inside joke.
Okay, let's talk about this press conference here, okay? Because I'm like you, my expectations on getting real answers from Duke Tobin are low. He's very good at deflecting. We see that at the Combine. We see that every year right before training camp. What's the one real answer Bengals fans should be looking to get from Duke Tobin at this press conference?
I'm still figuring out how I'm going to phrase the question. My question is, why are you doing this? No matter what it is, I'm always interested when stuff happens that has never happened before. Like I remember a very deep cut is on this show. We talked about the Bengals running a under center, no play action pass for the first. This is the first time in the Bengals organization on Friday that a front office member whose last name isn't Brown is ever being held accountable in any way. That's new. That's fascinating. That's different. That pairs as well with the statement that Mike Brown put out, looping in Duke Tobin into the same clause as Zach Taylor, as opposed to the 2020 statement that just had Zach's name. So that's a sign of how poorly things have gone from a personnel standpoint. I think another sign is the fact that we're going to be talking to Duke.
A lot of people are in our mentions. I'm sure your mentions are the same as mine. Ask the tough questions. Ask this question. Make him uncomfortable. And all of that is fine, but also at the same time, I think people have to understand we have to ask questions that are going to get real answers. The one that I'm curious about, and I know it won't be answered by Duke, is, look, they've invested so much into these players' contracts. Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, you know the names. If they're going to invest that much money into the players, why not invest more money, more manpower into the evaluation of building a better roster around them? More scouts, more people in the front office to help Duke Tobin make these decisions, because we've seen in recent drafts and then also in recent free agency, and maybe Duke's hands are tied by free agency, the evaluations haven't been good enough for this team to build the roster around them. That's something I'm interested from hearing from Duke Tobin. Now, you talked about understanding the reason why he's doing this. You use the word accountability. You think that's a big part of this, that the Bengals are trying to make Duke accountable for the roster not being good enough last year?
I think it's the idea that we're all a part of this, and obviously Zach's a part of it. We've talked to Zach. There's been accountability with Zach. There was a statement which Zach was included in. Zach had a press conference to talk about it. And dispersing that by including the front office side as well is a reflection on how expectations are different than 2020, on how the team building stuff hasn't clicked to the level they've needed it to since 2020. You have to be held accountable when you've made this many missteps from an evaluation and acquisition standpoint.
These are just going to be words from Duke Tobin on Friday. The actions matter more, and this offseason is as big as it gets, as Joe Burrow said right at the end of his press conference after the season finale. But also at the same time, I think the big change, and I think you would agree with this, and we won't know until we get there what it actually looks like, is the Bengals really have to be aggressive in free agency, correct? It can't be draft, develop again for a second straight year. And we can ask Duke all we want on Friday about the idea of going for it in this unique window of Burrow, Chase, and Higgins, but we're not going to know if the answer matches the actions until we get to free agency. But you have to think free agency has to be attacked. The Bengals have to be aggressive this free agent season to build this roster to get back to the playoffs next year.
Here's my big takeaway from the whole week, and it's something I've written, is, like Zach was up there on Monday, and I'm sure we'll hear similar topics from Duke on Friday. On Monday, Zach was talking about year 2 of Al Golden and connection and continuity, and all right, now the coaches understand what the front office is doing, and the front office understands what the coaches look for in the defensive side of the ball, and they're making that sell. It doesn't matter if I buy it. It doesn't matter if, the players even in the locker room buy it. What matters is is the free safety on the market who's weighing offers of the same value between the Bengals and the Eagles. Is he going to buy it in March? Does the free agent, because we've seen free agents take less to come to Cincinnati because they put a concrete value on the chance to play for a championship. None more than Orlando Brown, a very important ad. Orlando wouldn't be in Cincinnati if the Bengals were coming off, 2 9-8 seasons and 1 6-11 season. And of course he is now in Orlando, loves being in the Bengals locker room, and he's couldn't feel better about the experience. But there's the impact of that draw. And do free agents out there still see, Burrow, Chase, Higgins, they'll be fine, and believe in what they're building? Or do they look at the Bengals as, the teams they're right around in the draft position rankings with? Are the Bengals just like the Saints or, the Bucks or the NFC South? Is that the tier the Bengals are now? The players will have to decide.
Continuity is a word that's pretty obvious about what the Bengals are doing this week with the statement that Zach and Duke Tobin are coming back. How can continuity help this team win? Because Bengals fans are frustrated. And I understand the frustration. You see the standard of accountability at other places that are having similar type stretches that the Bengals are having, and they're making changes. And sometimes changes are just for change's sake. Sometimes change matters. Look at the two teams in the playoffs this year in the NFL with first-year head coaches that energized their buildings in Chicago and Jacksonville, and here they are, two teams who won a lot of games are now playing for the playoffs. But this is the reality, okay? Zach's back, Duke is back. So how can continuity help this organization win in 2026?
I'm going to turn this into a double negative. The Bengals are bad in periods of change. Look at 2019, and then specifically I'll dive more into last offseason, which now, again, part of Zach's message on Monday was continuity, the coaches know what the front office, the subtext of that was we weren't maybe all the way where we needed to be in 2025. And then there were misevaluations, and there were mistakes. And there was, through 11 games, the worst defense in NFL history. Because the Bengals have the smallest front office and scouting staff, they are uniquely dependent on the coaching staff. And when you lean that much on the coaching staff, but the continuity and chemistry and synchronization between the front office and staff hasn't established yet, that's still wet cement. That's not a foundation, and you're putting more weight than other teams would on that block of wet cement, and that's where they were in 2025. So if you did it again in 2026, you'd fall all the way through, and so that's the value of continuity. The fact that change, when there's not continuity, they're not probably well set up to handle that.
There is significant change in the AFC North. I was pretty stunned by the Baltimore news of John Harbaugh being let go. He's out in Baltimore. Kevin Stefanski is out in Cleveland. The Pittsburgh Steelers are the champions of the AFC North and going to the playoffs. The AFC North is going to look a lot different next year. When you look at it from a whole, how much is the landscape actually changing in the AFC North, and how do the Bengals fit in that changing landscape?
I'd like to kill what I thought already was a misconception. Oh, you got to build for the North. The North being run the ball.
Yeah.
Big physical defensive linemen, nose tackles, run pass balance, play action. That idea of the AFC North that I grew up with, that you covered earlier in your career, that's dead. What the AFC North is now is Lamar Jackson, and I bet a scheme that matches the high-powered Lamar Jackson that we've seen him already be for 2 years, much more of a spread, new school style of team. Cleveland, everyone in the league has a Myles Garrett problem. Myles Garrett doesn't make Cleveland an AFC North. Just one unbelievable, transcendent player doesn't mean your whole organization is still going through that pound the rock, stop the run mentality. Pittsburgh fits that the most, but look at Joe Burrow's last few games against Pittsburgh. In 2022, I believe 37 points.
Sure.
Didn't face him in 2023. But Jake Brown actually did pretty good on the road. T. Higgins had like 200 receiving yards that day. 2024 would have like 37 points at home against the Steelers in a game they lost, but 37 or something like that. Maybe even 40 points at home against the Steelers. And then Steelers couldn't stop him at home in 2024. Flacco lit him up in 2025 at home. The Steelers' defense isn't this old school, you got to pound the rock and you're getting into this slugfest against them. That's not what any of this is anymore. Build your team accordingly.
If you heard it, Charlie's phone went off.
It's my brother.
Okay.
He has a problem. He calls me too often.
It's not a problem.
Well, you're right.
Do you send him birthday texts?
Yeah. He's
immediate family.
He's immediate family.
Falls in the rules.
I like my brother. Not trying to be mean to my brother, but he shouldn't be calling now. He knows better.
The phone is on the desk because at any point there could be some Reds news, so we'll make sure.
Well, today is arbitration day, which is which is so in the weeds I won't even explain it.
That's why the phone is out here. So if you need to take a phone call or a text, don't worry, I'll just filibust for a few minutes. We're going to get to the Reds momentarily. I have 2 more questions I want to dive in on the Cincinnati Bengals. We were talking about continuity in the AFC North, and I found it funny when I watched the AFC North championship game. There were 2 back-to-back sneaks by the Steelers against the Ravens. It felt like old school stuff, but that's just kind of the way the team.
But then look at the way that game ended.
But then look at the way the game ended with the big plays down the field, Zay Flowers and Lamar Jackson shoving a guy off. That's where I was going with that. That's what ultimately wins games in the AFC North. We saw that happen. Okay, let's dive now into Bengals offseason. We talked about free agency. They're going to get there, but the Bengals also have some decisions to make amongst players already in the building. There are 4 free agent names I'm going to give you. I want to power rank these names, and by power rank them, I want you to do it, of most important to least important for the Bengals to bring these 4 back. The names are Dalton Risner, Geno Stone, Cam Taylor-Britt, and Joseph Osai. 1 to 4, what's the priority?
Quick timeout. The fact that these are like the 4.
Not great.
That was the problem with the 2025 Bengals.
But Dalton Risner, though.
We like Risner. This veteran core that was supposed to be like, all right, your young vets who were in their primes weren't good enough, and you went 6-11. Boy, the Dalton Risner hype train. I haven't seen much like it.
Choo-choo.
I'm trying to think. Can you remember a hype train quite to this level from a guy who really wasn't, or from any guy who wasn't drafted by the Bengals?
I think the hype is coming from the media who just enjoy talking to him.
I
want him in the room because he's a great interview. People always ask me who you root for. I say I root for myself. I root for a great story, and Dalton Risner gives great content. So keep Dalton Risner to keep him in Cincinnati. But yeah, I get your point.
No, but like Ted Karras, Amarius Mims, Orlando Brown have been very vocal. Very unbelievable. Something I haven't seen for like a role player. Like everyone loves Drew Sample. No one was saying we got to re-sign Drew, and they did. But that's what's so impressive about this Risner campaign.
But he's number 1.
He's number 1.
Yeah.
I guess Geno Stone's number 2.
Ooh.
And I made the case last week, bring him back as safety 3, but I don't think that's necessarily where his mindset's at. Number 3, I have Osai, who's the best player of the bunch.
Yeah.
But, man, his wrist injury really spooks me. It's been a chronic thing since his rookie season, combined with the fact that you kind of need to do better than Osai. It's like the Brendan Sorsby UC football debate. Like now, of course, they couldn't keep Brendan Sorsby, but the funniest thing of all of it is after watching the last 7 games of the season, really what UC needs at quarterback is someone better than Brendan Sorsby. So you're not going to break the bank for Brendan Sorsby when you also ideally would want to raise the bar. And then for Cam Taylor-Britt, I know he's been in the news. I had a fascinating conversation with him on Monday that I wish I got to write because unfortunately, the timing doesn't really work right now. I don't know that anyone has had a more interesting Bengals career than Cam among the guys who aren't like Joe and Jamar on the roster right now, just all because the roller coaster it was. But seems like the end there.
You said you got the sense that Geno Stone doesn't want to be back as a rotational guy.
Geno said that, and take this for what you will, he says he talks to people after games, and they say, we want you on our team. We think you can start. And what I asked him was, do you think the Bengals would have interest? And he didn't like that. And I think that's how the Bengals see it, is you'd compete. You're not our guy at free safety. Just look at the fact that they rotated Tyson Anderson in Week 18. I don't think that's how Geno views his ideal landing spot. Okay,
let's shift now to the Cincinnati Reds. It's been awfully quiet here in Cincinnati. The Kyle Schwarber comment has come and gone. That didn't happen. It was great to talk about. It gave us topics here on the Gold Standard for about a month, so thanks to Kyle Schwarber and that topic. But is the ship sailed on the Reds doing something that says, oh, I didn't see that coming, big trade, big move? Is that a possibility now as we're about 6 or 7 weeks from the start of spring training?
I've said this for a few weeks. I mean, I see the board. I have a board. I think the best thing that could happen would be re-signing Austin Hayes. And how much does that move the needle? I'll let you, the viewer, decide at home. I mean, he did hit cleanup for them last year, but that'd be in the $5 to $8 million range. That's not anything that's going to make you feel like the Reds are going above and beyond to push all in for this year's team. I've really been trying to find some under the radar, like Gavin Lux level trade possibilities. Lux was only available last year because the Dodgers signed 4 players and all of a sudden he was expendable. So like, is there a Blue Jay who's going to get squeezed out, who was a solid player for them last year? The Mets have 4 young infielders. They don't have a spot for all 4 of them, especially if they make another move or two. So maybe there's something that kind of pops up. But while they say they have more room, maybe that could change too with the TV stuff that's happening. I don't see anything that would be like, man, we got this guy.
From everything I've read and talking to you as well, it doesn't feel like the Reds want to trade any of their top 6 pitchers. And I pulled out those 6 because I include Rhett Lauder in that 6. It doesn't feel like they want to move any of those guys.
So here's where those stands, and they've been very consistent all this offseason, all offseason. When you look at how critical starting pitching depth is and how much of it you need, I always say the season ended in 2021, 2023, and 2024 when they ran out of starting pitching, and the season made it to the playoffs in 25 because they didn't. They feel like right now they have just enough starting pitching depth, specifically when you factor in how it's Burns' second pro season. Lauder just missed a full year, and then the rest of their depth is led by 2 guys in Williamson and Aguiar, who also just missed a full season. They feel like they have just enough depth right now. Now, I've heard no Brady Singer trade rumors. One possible lane that exists that we've seen the Reds do this before on a smaller scale, would be trading Brady Singer, getting something back, and using the remaining money you have to go out and sign a position player and improve your team that way. They call it backfilling. My concern with that strategy would be, you look at so first of all, the position player you'd be getting back, he'll be making something. He'll be making anywhere between $3 to $10 million. And then you look at the fact that like Michael Lorenzen, who we like, but we know what Michael Lorenzen, just signed for $8 million. So like now you're trading Brady Singer, who's probably worth like $16 million, but is getting paid $12 million. And you're getting whatever you get back in the trade, which in a best case, Jonathan India. You literally just made that deal. And then you have just enough money to scratch together to get another version of Michael Lorenzen.
Yeah.
I don't really see how you get a ton better there.
Okay. We're going to go to the Gold Rush now. I'm going to use the Gold Rush as something different here. Usually it's rapid fire to Charlie, and these might turn out to be rapid fire, or they might be discussion points. I want to tangent to college basketball.
Oh, yeah.
You go to all the Xavier games, you go to all the UC games. I want to talk some college basketball because it's hot right now in Cincinnati, topic-wise. The basketball is not great outside of Oxford, where Miami, as of this taping, is still undefeated with Travis Steele. What program is healthier right now, UC or Xavier?
I think Xavier's shown, one, they're good at the very detailed coaching stuff, which to me is really important. UC has much more talent. We knew this. I mean, yes, I watched the crosstown shootout. UC has much more talent, and the fact that the talent is that undetailed isn't a word, but that undetailed, there's that little detail that like you're running out of bounds plays that make off the dribble threes for Jalen Celestine and 3-point shots for Baba Miller, compared to, even though Xavier has less talent and will probably get blown out more, I've seen creative ways they've sprung, ways to get. Milicevic has had some clutch moments. Obviously, Trey Carroll against UC. Like, I see more ideas and vision there. Both of these rosters will look completely different next year anyway. I think that Pitino is shown to be a better, in terms of just this year's roster, evaluator of pieces that fit a system and developing those pieces on the fly.
That last point you made about the rosters looking completely different next year is a topic I want to come back to finish this discussion point, but I want to hammer here on UC. And does it feel to you like it does to me that the walls are starting to close in on Wes Miller and he's starting to crack? Listen, Wes Miller going in front of a microphone and saying, it's us against the world, nobody believes in us. He's done that so many times now that it just kind of feels like the boy who cried wolf a little bit to me. But it's the form he did it in, cutting off Dan Horde and really losing it after a game. That just felt a little bit different. Are you starting to feel like Wes Miller is feeling the pressure and he's starting to crack?
Even just listening specifically to these post-game radio interviews, like he doesn't, and I mean this in the most physical sense, he doesn't sound like himself.
Yeah.
He sounds almost like the voice you use like around the house with the people you know very like with your brother when he gives you a call when he's not supposed to, and your brother knows what that voice sounds like, but you, I mean, we're friends, but you don't. Like, he almost sounds like he's using that frustrated internal voice on the most public stages he has, and that to me shows a reflection of a guy who's changing under the pressure of what he's dealing with. And while they made the big lineup change a couple weeks ago, I also feel like they haven't had any sort of real idea of how to fix this. Like, it's not even like they're trying something. And again, we could talk about the lineup change and what's changed and what hasn't with that, but it hasn't felt like they've even shaken things up to the extent they should.
To finish the Gold Rush, I want to go back to the point about the changing rosters in college basketball. And we're starting to see it now more than ever, I think, with this portal season in college football, where it's just completely out of control. No one knows who's going to be where. Schools are trying to play in the college football playoff, but also trying to create the roster for next year. It just seems like it's too much. I'm from a different generation. So 20 years ago, when you were a small child, I would watch college basketball, and you could see teams develop from, okay, one of the great things about being a college basketball fan was, look at him, he's a freshman, look at all that talent. Imagine what he's going to be when he's a senior or he's a junior, and you get to watch them develop. That's gone. It almost feels like you can't rely on guys to be at a place for more than 1 year. I find myself, Charlie, less and less motivated to put on college basketball games and watch. I'll watch Xavier, UC, NKU, Miami, UK, because that's part of my job. But if Kansas is playing, pick your other power, Duke, and that game is on TV on a Tuesday night, I'm less likely now more than ever to watch it, just because I don't feel invested in either liking or disliking the rosters. And that was great about college basketball. You grew to love or dislike players on teams. It's completely gone, and it feels like it's changed completely over here the last 5 years. Again, you're from a different generation of watching college basketball and watching college football. Is your love of the game still where it was, or has it changed as NIL has really started to dictate roster movement and transfer portal all over the country?
Let me start here with my $1 million idea. Every game, when you do like the NFL does, like, you know, T. Higgins, Clemson, every game as a part of the pregame package, there should be a set of where all these players have played previously. So because when I watch college basketball now, I end up spending the first 10 minutes on Basketball Reference where I know that name, and you play connected odds and don't even watch the first 10 minutes of the game. I used to watch all of the college basketball. Now I really just watch UC and Xavier. Yeah. And now I'm that way, as like I cut out college football aside from UC. I've kind of trended that way just generally with how I roll. But certainly college basketball went from the sport I knew the most about to the sport that I follow least closely.
Yeah, it's a shame. It was one of my favorite things to watch. I would go out and say it was my favorite thing. College basketball was my thing. I just don't watch games like I used to. You okay on your phone?
I'm good.
We're still good on the phone. Okay, we're going to finish up here the Gold Standard Podcast with the Gold Nugget. This is a chance for Charlie to take over for your segment here at the end. A great interview you've done, something inside your notebook. What do you have for us this week on the Gold Nugget?
Before I get, and it's kind of in the weeds about the Reds, but here's the best part, the most in the weeds part. I was doing some deep dive into Reds pitching today, and I was doing I was deep in the data, and the data sorts. Did you know that the Reds, among pitchers who faced at least 10 batters last year, have the guy who is alphabetically first, Andrew Abbott, and alphabetically last? Why do the Reds keep showing, oh, it's alphabetical?
Did you see Jeremy's reply to you? Charlie ... Now
that was disappointment, but to me this was an unbelievable discovery. But no, like what I wrote about was, I think the three Reds we're not talking about enough are Connor Phillips, Zach Maxwell, Luis May, who have the ability to become the next version of the core, for example, that really helped lead the Reds to the playoffs in 2020. What they remind me a lot of was like Lorenzen, Iglesias, Garrett, and how that homegrown group showed up massively. The Reds, aside from Alexis Diaz, really haven't had that, and Tony Santian, a converted starter, a little bit different in his trajectory. But those three guys and the upside, but also if it doesn't work out, what that means for the stability of the Reds bullpen, are sneaky, really important Reds this year.
Is there a guy in that group who can be the Tony Santian?
I think the leader in the clubhouse is Connor Phillips, just because of the stuff. But what makes Tony is Tony can pitch 81 times in the season. Looking at those guys, I think Luis May is best set up to pitch that much. Luis, I mean, we've talked about this. Like, he wants to be the next Mariano Rivera or Aldis Chapman. What an interesting guy. But I know they're not the most household names. But as I was preparing for spring training and going through, all right, what are the big stories here? Those three guys need to be discussed more.
Another great episode of The Gold Standard. You can get it every single week wherever you get your podcasts and on Fox 19 now streaming. For Charlie Goldsmith, I'm Joe Daneman. You can call your brother now and tell him.
I like my brother. I didn't mean to make it sound like I don't like him. But he calls too much.
Please say you love your brother and don't just like your brother.
I love my brother. Here you go, Lewis.
The great Charlie Goldsmith. We'll see you next week on The Gold Standard.